The sky above Kethra burned orange and red. Smoke rose from the cities below like dark fingers reaching toward the stars. Ambassador Nari stood at the window of the command center, her pale blue skin reflecting the fires that consumed her world. She had not slept in 4 days. None of them had. Behind her, the screens showed the same terrible images over and over. Colony 7 was gone. The outer stations had stopped responding. The great fleet of the Valori people, once the pride of the Galactic Union, was nothing but floating metal and frozen bodies now. Fleet Commander Tejo walked into the room. His uniform was torn and dirty. A deep cut ran across his face, and his left arm hung useless at his side. He had been on the front lines when the Draken first attacked. He was one of the few who made it back. "The Methani homeworld has fallen," he said. His voice was flat, empty of emotion. "The Orith are retreating to their final colonies. We are alone." Nari closed her eyes. The Draken swarm had come from the dark spaces between galaxies. Ancient texts spoke of them as destroyers of civilizations, eaters of worlds. For 10,000 years, they had been silent. Everyone thought they were gone, forever. They were wrong. "How many ships do we have left?" Nari asked. Tejo looked at the floor. The number hit Nari like a physical blow. 17 ships against a swarm that numbered in the millions. It was not a battle. It was waiting to die. The door opened again, and Elder Counselor Baal entered the room. He was Methani, one of the ancient ones who had guided the Galactic Union for centuries. His skin was gray and wrinkled like old paper, and he moved slowly with the help of a floating chair. But his eyes were still sharp. "I have been thinking," Baal said, "about the humans." The room went quiet. Nari felt something cold move through her chest. The humans. No one spoke about the humans. "Elder," Tejo said carefully, "the humans are quarantined. They have been for 200 years. The barrier around their system cannot be broken." "The barrier was built by us," Baal replied. "It can be unbuilt by us." Nari turned to face the old counselor. "Why were the humans quarantined?" "The records never say clearly." Baal was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with old guilt. "Because we were afraid of them. Our scouts found their world 200 years ago. A small planet, blue and green, circling a yellow star. Nothing special, but the creatures living there." He paused. "They were something we had never seen before." "Dangerous?" Tejo asked. "Beyond dangerous. They fought constantly. Against their environment. Against each other. Against everything. They had survived extinction events that would have destroyed any other species. Ice ages. Plagues. They even split the atom and used it as a weapon against themselves." Baal shook his head slowly. "And they survived. They always survived." Nari did not understand. "If they are so dangerous, why would we ask them for help?" "Because nothing else has worked," Baal said simply. "The Draken have defeated every strategy we have. They adapt to our weapons. They learn our tactics. They are a perfect enemy." He looked directly at Nari. "But the humans are something even the Draken have not faced. Our ancient records show that human ancestors encountered a small Draken scouting force thousands of years ago. They were primitive then. Stone tools and fire. But they won. They drove the Draken back." "Impossible," Tejo whispered. "I thought so too. But the records are clear. There is something in humans that is different. Something that does not break. Something that does not surrender." Baal turned his chair toward the communication console. "We must contact them." Nari felt fear rise in her throat. She had heard the stories. All children of the Union heard the stories. Humans were monsters. Humans were chaos given flesh. Humans were the reason the quarantine existed. But as she looked out the window at her burning world, she realized something. The monsters were already here. The Draken were consuming everything she loved. What was one more monster? I will send the transmission, Nari said. Teho grabbed her arm. You cannot be serious. Even if they receive it, even if they can break through the barrier, why would they help us? We locked them in their own solar system. We treated them like animals. Then we will beg, Nari replied. We will apologize. We will offer them anything they want. She pulled her arm free and walked to the console. What other choice do we have? Nari replied. No one answered. There was no answer to give. Nari sat down at the console and began recording. Her hands shook as she spoke into the device. She told the humans everything. The Draken, the destruction, the billions of lives already lost. She told them about the quarantine and apologized for it, though she knew the words meant nothing. She promised them membership in the Union, access to all technology, anything and everything they wanted. At the end, she simply said, Please, we are dying. You are our last hope. She sent the transmission toward the Sol system, toward the small blue planet called Earth. Then she sat back and waited. Around her, the command center was silent. Teho stared at the screens, showing the advancing Draken swarm. Baal had closed his eyes, perhaps praying to gods that had not answered in centuries. Nari looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, her message was traveling through the void, carrying the desperate words of a dying civilization to creatures that every other species in the galaxy feared. She did not know if the humans would answer. She did not know if they could answer. But for the first time in 4 days, she felt something other than despair. She felt hope. Small and fragile, like a candle in a storm. It was enough. Deep beneath the mountains of Korea, Admiral Yuna sat in the darkness of the monitoring station. She was 73 years old, but her eyes were still sharp, and her mind was still quick. She had spent her entire life preparing for something she hoped would never come. The transmission arrived at 3 in the morning. The computers flagged it immediately. It was not human. It came from outside the barrier. Yuna read the message 3 times. Then, she read it again. Her hands did not shake. Her face did not change. She had trained herself long ago to control her emotions. But inside her chest, something old and angry began to wake up. She remembered her grandmother's stories. The day the alien ships appeared over Earth. The way they scanned the planet like farmers examining livestock. The way they left without a single word. And then the barrier. Invisible, but unbreakable. Trapping humanity inside their own solar system, like prisoners. For 200 years, humanity had asked one question. Why? Why did the galaxy lock them away? What crime had they committed? What threat did they pose? Now Yuna had her answer. The aliens were afraid. They had always been afraid. No. She picked up her phone and made the call that would change history. 12 hours later, the United Earth Council met in emergency session. The council chamber was full of the most powerful people on the planet. Presidents, generals, scientists, leaders of every nation. They all stared at the screen where Nari's message played on loop. They want our help, said General Minho. He was a tall man, with gray hair and cold eyes. He had built Earth's defense fleet from nothing, always believing that one day the barrier would fall and enemies would come. The same creatures that caged us like animals now want us to save them. The question is simple, said Admiral Yuna. Do we help them, or do we let them burn? The room exploded into argument. Some wanted revenge. Let the aliens die, they said. Let them feel what it is like to be helpless. Others spoke of morality. We cannot let billions die when we have the power to help, they argued. That would make us the monsters they think we are. Yuna listened to all of it. She watched the message play again, watching the young alien woman speak her desperate words. Nari. That was her name. She looked tired. She looked scared. She looked exactly like Yuna's granddaughter had looked during the Pacific earthquake of 2089. Enough, Yuna said. The room went quiet. When Yuna spoke, people listened. I have made my decision. We go. General Minho stood up. Admiral, with respect, why should we risk our people for creatures that treated us like diseases? Because that is exactly what they expect us to do, Yuna replied. They expect us to be selfish. They expect us to be vengeful. They expect us to be the monsters they imagined. She looked around the room at every face. But we are not monsters. We are human, and humans do not abandon those who need help, even if those people have wronged us. She paused and let her words sink in. There is also another reason, she continued. The Draken swarm. Our ancient records mention them. Cave paintings, old stories, fragments of memory passed down through generations. Our ancestors faced these creatures before. They were primitive. They had nothing but rocks and fire, and they won. Her voice hardened. If the Draken are not stopped now, they will eventually find a way through the barrier. They will come to Earth, and I would rather fight them out there, with allies, than wait here alone. The vote was close, but in the end, Yuna won. The barrier fell 3 days later. Earth's scientists had studied it for 2 centuries, learning its secrets, preparing for the day when they might need to break it. The day came, and the barrier shattered like glass. The fleet launched from bases on Earth, Mars, and the moons of Jupiter. 57 warships, each one built for a war that humanity always knew was coming. They were not beautiful ships. They had no elegant curves or shining hulls. They were brutal, practical, designed for one purpose: survival. Admiral Yuna stood on the bridge of the Eternal Soul, watching the stars stream past as the fleet entered faster than light travel. Around her, the crew worked in silence. They were disciplined. They were trained. They were ready. Admiral, said Captain Junho, her second in command. He was young, barely 40, with a calm face and quick hands. The crew is asking questions. They want to know what we are flying into. Tell them the truth, Yuna said. We are flying into a war against an enemy that has destroyed civilizations. We are outnumbered. We are outgunned. Many of us will not come home. She turned to face him. But we are human. And that is enough. Junho nodded slowly. He did not look afraid. None of them did. Fear was a luxury they could not afford. The fleet flew on through the darkness between stars. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light in the endless black. Ahead of them, the galaxy burned, and humanity was coming to put out the fire. Ambassador Nari had given up hope. 3 weeks had passed since she sent the transmission. 3 weeks of watching the Draken consume her world piece by piece. 3 weeks of counting the dead. She was standing in the command center when the sensors screamed. "Ships incoming!" Tejo shouted, jumping to his feet. 57 contacts, approaching fast. Nari felt her heart stop. More Draken. It had to be. They were coming to finish the job. But then the communication officer turned around, his face pale with shock. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above Cathara. Nari watched them appear on the screens, one after another. They were nothing like Union ships. No graceful lines, no flowing shapes. These ships looked like weapons. Hard angles, thick armor, darkness, and death given form. The lead ship sent a message. A single line of text. We received your call. Where do you need us? End. 4. We. 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 Nari could not speak. She could not move. After everything, after all the years of fear and stories and warnings, the humans had actually come. Tejo recovered first. He sent back coordinates, battle data, everything they had. The human fleet moved without hesitation, heading straight toward the largest concentration of Draken forces. They are insane, Tejo whispered. Those positions have killed thousands of our soldiers. The Draken have dug in deep. Nari watched the screens. She did not know what to expect. She had never seen humans fight. No one in living memory had. What she saw changed everything she believed. The human ships did not fight like Union ships. They did not keep distance. They did not rely on shields and long-range weapons. They flew straight into the enemy, guns blazing, taking hits that would destroy any Union vessel. And they kept fighting. On the ground, it was even worse. Human soldiers landed on the surface within hours. Nari watched the feeds from the front lines, unable to look away. Captain Junho led the first strike team. He was smaller than Nari expected. All the humans were small compared to Valori, but there was something in the way he moved, something in his eyes, that made her blood run cold. The Draken were terrible creatures. 6 legs, armored shells, jaws that could bite through metal. They moved in swarms, overwhelming their enemies with numbers and speed. Every Union soldier who faced them died screaming. The humans did not scream. Junho and his team hit the Draken position like a storm. They used weapons Nari had never seen before. Explosive rounds that tore through armor. Knives and blades for close combat. They fought in ways that made no sense, taking risks that should have killed them instantly. Lieutenant Sora, a woman with short hair and a scar across her throat, charged into a group of 12 Draken alone. She killed 8 of them before the others fell back. She was bleeding from a dozen wounds. She did not stop fighting. Nari watched a human soldier get his arm torn off by a Draken claw. He picked up his weapon with his other hand and kept shooting until his team could pull him back. He was still alive. "What are they?" Tejo asked, his voice barely a whisper. Nari did not answer. She did not have an answer. By the end of the first day, the humans had taken back 3 positions that the Union had lost weeks ago. They lost soldiers. Many soldiers. But for every human that fell, 10 Draken died. Captain Junho requested a meeting with Nari that evening. She agreed, though part of her wanted to run away and hide. He arrived at the command center, covered in blood and dirt. His armor was cracked. One of his eyes was swollen shut, but he stood straight and spoke clearly. "Ambassador Nari," he said. "I am Captain Junho of the United Earth Fleet. We are here to help." "Why?" The word came out before Nari could stop it. "We locked you away. We treated your people like monsters. Why would you help us?" Junho was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm. "Because you asked. Because you were dying. Because someone had to." He paused. "And because the Draken will not stop with your worlds. If we do not fight them here, we will fight them at Earth. Better to face them now, together, than alone later." Nari studied his face. She looked for anger, for hatred, for the monster she had been taught to fear. She found none of those things. She found something else instead. Something she had no name for. A quiet strength, a refusal to quit, a determination that burned like a fire that would not go out. "I do not understand your people," Nari admitted. Junho smiled. It was a tired smile, but it was real. "Neither do we, sometimes. But that is okay. Understanding can come later. Right now, we have a war to win." He turned and walked back toward the battlefield. Nari watched him go. This small creature from a small world, walking toward impossible odds like it was just another day. She began to understand why the galaxy had been afraid of humans. She also began to understand why fear was the wrong response. The war had been going on for 2 months. Slowly, painfully, the tide was turning. Ambassador Nari had moved to the human command ship, the Eternal Soul, to serve as a link between the Union survivors and the human forces. Every day, she saw things that challenged everything she thought she knew. She watched Dr. Jiwoo work in the medical bay. The human woman was small and soft-spoken, with gentle hands and tired eyes. She treated human soldiers and Valori survivors with the same care, the same dedication. When a young Valori child was brought in, burned and crying, Jiwoo held her and sang soft human songs until the child fell asleep. This is a monster? Nari thought. This woman who heals and comforts? She watched engineer Do-hyun spend 3 days without sleep to repair a Methani shield generator. The device was alien technology, built on principles humans had never seen before. Do-hyun studied it, took it apart, figured out how it worked, and made it better than it was before. When Nari asked him why he worked so hard, he just shrugged. People are depending on those shields, he said simply. I will sleep when they are safe. She watched Commander Hyun lead a mission into the heart of a Draken hive ship. The ship was the size of a small moon, filled with millions of Draken warriors. Union commanders said the mission was suicide. They said no one could survive it. Hyun smiled and asked for volunteers. Every human soldier in the room raised their hand. The mission was brutal. Nari watched the footage later, unable to turn away. The humans fought through corridors of living flesh, past horrors that made even veteran Valori soldiers vomit. They lost half their team in the first hour. They kept going. Hyun planted charges in the ship's core and detonated them from the inside. The explosion killed 200,000 Draken and crippled the swarm's largest vessel. Hyun and 3 of his soldiers made it out alive. When he returned to the Eternal Soul, he did not celebrate. He did not boast. He went to the memorial wall, added the names of the fallen, and stood there in silence for an hour. Then he went back to planning the next mission. Nari found herself spending more time with the humans. She ate meals with them. She listened to their stories. She learned about Earth, about its history, about the endless struggles that had shaped humanity into what it was. She learned about the Ice Ages, when humans survived freezing cold with nothing but animal skins and fire. She learned about the plagues, when diseases killed millions but humanity kept going. She learned about the wars, terrible and bloody, where humans killed each other by the millions. And she learned about the things that came after, the rebuilding, the healing, the stubborn refusal to give up. One evening, Elder Counselor Bale asked to see her. He was dying. The wounds he had received in the early attacks had never healed properly. His gray skin had turned pale, and his breath came in short, painful gasps. Come, he said, gesturing to a chair beside his bed. I must tell you the truth. The whole truth. Nari sat down and waited. We did not quarantine the humans because they were dangerous, Bale said. Many species are dangerous. The Valori conquered 3 star systems before they joined the Union. The Methani once built weapons that could destroy planets. He coughed, a wet, rattling sound. I do not understand, Nari said. Humans adapt, Bale explained. That is their gift. Their curse. Whatever breaks other species, humans turn into strength. Cold made them build fire. Disease made them build medicine. War made them build weapons beyond imagination. He looked at her with ancient, tired eyes. We gave the Valori our technology, and in 1,000 years, you learned to use it well. We gave the Methani our knowledge, and they became wise. He paused, struggling for breath. But humans, if we gave humans our technology, they would not just learn to use it. They would improve it. They would change it. They would make it into something we could not predict or control. In 100 years, they would surpass us. In 200, they would rule the galaxy. He closed his eyes. That is what we feared. Not their violence, their potential. Nari sat in silence, absorbing his words. Were we right to fear them? She finally asked. Bale laughed, though it turned into a cough. Look out the window, child. See what they have done in 2 months. They have turned a losing war into a fighting chance. They have saved millions of lives. They have given us hope, when we had none. He opened his eyes and looked at her. We feared they would become monsters. Instead, they became exactly what we needed. He reached out and took her hand. His grip was weak, but his voice was strong. When I am gone, tell them the truth. Tell them why we locked them away. They deserve to know. And tell them, he paused, searching for words. Tell them I am sorry. Tell them the galaxy is grateful. Tell them we were fools. He died that night, peacefully, with Nari holding his hand. She stood at the window of the command ship and watched the human fleet moving through the darkness. Lights flickered. Weapons fired. Soldiers fought and died and kept fighting. She thought about monsters. She thought about fear. She thought about the strange, stubborn, beautiful creatures who had come to save a galaxy that had rejected them. She thought about what it meant to be human, and she began to understand. The final battle began above Kethera's largest moon. The Draken Queen had come. She was ancient, older than most civilizations, a creature of nightmare and legend. Her ship was a living thing, a mass of flesh and metal and hunger that stretched across the sky like a wound in space. Behind her came the full might of the swarm. Millions of ships, billions of warriors, the last desperate strike of an enemy that had never known defeat. Admiral Yuna stood on the bridge of the Eternal Soul and looked at the enemy fleet. The numbers were impossible. 10 Draken ships for every human and Union vessel combined. The sensors showed a wall of death moving toward them. She felt no fear. She had trained her whole life for this moment. All ships, she said calmly, hold the line. The battle began with fire. The Draken came in waves, endless waves, crashing against the combined fleet like an ocean against rocks. Ships exploded. Crews died. The darkness lit up with 1,000 small suns as vessels burned and broke. But the humans held. They fought with everything they had. They used tactics the Draken had never seen, strategies born from thousands of years of human warfare. They sacrificed ships to protect others. They rammed enemy vessels when their weapons failed. They refused, absolutely refused, to retreat. Ambassador Nari watched from the command deck, her heart pounding. She had seen humans fight before. But this was something else. This was desperation and courage and stubborn, beautiful madness. The battle lasted 9 hours. By hour 3, the Union ships had been reduced to a handful. Their commanders, trained for elegant warfare, could not adapt to the chaos. But the humans covered their retreat, taking hits meant for their allies, buying time with blood. By hour 6, the human fleet had lost half its ships. Admiral Yuna's voice never wavered. She moved pieces across the battlefield like a master playing a game, always one step ahead, always finding a way to survive. By hour 9, Captain Junho led the final strike. His team had been planning this from the beginning. A small group of soldiers, the best of the best, flying a single ship into the heart of the Queen's vessel. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew it. Junho volunteered anyway. Lieutenant Sora was with him. Engineer Do-hyun. A dozen others whose names would be remembered forever. They flew through the storm of battle, dodging fire, taking hits, pushing forward when any sane person would turn back. They breached the Queen's ship. Inside, it was hell. Living corridors that shifted and moved. Draken warriors pouring from every direction. The air itself was poison. One by one, Junho's team fell. Sora died holding a corridor so the others could advance. She killed 37 Draken before they brought her down. Her last words were a joke. Something about finally getting a vacation. Do-hyun died at a sealed door, using his body to complete a circuit so the others could pass through. He smiled as he did it. In the end, only Junho remained. He walked through the final corridor alone, bleeding from wounds that should have killed him. His armor was broken. His weapons were empty, but his legs still worked. So he kept walking. The Queen's chamber was vast, a cathedral of flesh and darkness. She waited for him there, a mountain of chitin and hate, a being that had consumed civilizations before humanity learned to walk upright. She spoke into his mind. Her voice was cold, ancient, hungry. "Little creature," she said, "you are nothing. Your species is nothing. I have devoured stars. I have ended worlds. What can one small thing do against me?" Junho looked up at her. He was dying. He knew it. But he thought of Earth. He thought of his mother's garden, full of flowers that bloomed every spring. He thought of his father's laugh, loud and warm. He thought of the cherry blossoms in Seoul, pink and white, against a blue sky. He thought of every human who had ever refused to quit, ever stood up when they should have stayed down, ever fought against impossible odds because someone had to. He smiled. "You want to know what one small thing can do?" he said. He pressed the detonator. The explosion was visible from space. A flash of light that tore through the Queen's ship, ripping it apart from the inside. The Draken swarm felt their queen die and screamed, a sound that echoed across every frequency, every mind, every corner of the battlefield. And then they ran. The swarm scattered, broken, fleeing into the dark spaces between stars. The battle was over. The war was won. On the bridge of the Eternal Soul, Admiral Yuna allowed herself to close her eyes for just a moment. Around her, the crew was silent, exhausted, alive. "Get our people home," she said quietly. 3 weeks later, the Galactic Union held a ceremony. They offered humanity everything: full membership, access to all technology, a seat on the High Council. Admiral Yuna accepted graciously, but Ambassador Nari saw the look in her eyes. The humans were not doing this for rewards. They were not doing this for power or glory. They were doing it because somewhere out there, in the endless darkness, something else might be waiting. Something worse than the Draken. And when that something came, humanity would be ready. Nari stood at the spaceport and watched the human fleet prepare to leave. They were taking their dead home. Thousands of bodies wrapped in flags. Each one a hero who would never be forgotten. Captain Junho's name was on the memorial wall now, alongside Sora and Dohyun and all the others. Nari had visited it every day since the battle ended. Admiral Yuna found her there on the last day. "You saved us," Nari said. "Even after everything we did to you. Why?" "Ender." Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, a small, tired smile. "Because that is what humans do," she said. "We face the darkness. We fight the monsters. We protect the people who cannot protect themselves." She looked at the stars. "Not because we have to, because it is right." She walked away, toward her ship, toward Earth, toward whatever came next. Nari watched her go. She thought about monsters and heroes. She thought about fear and hope. She thought about a small blue planet circling a yellow star, full of creatures who should have hated the galaxy, but chose to save it instead. She whispered a prayer in the old Valori tongue. Not for the dead, for the living, for the humans. Whatever darkness rose, whatever horrors waited in the void, Nari knew one thing for certain: humanity would be there, fighting, protecting, surviving, forever.